Other red flags are just the gradual control and takeover of your life. If somebody is changing phone numbers, not letting friends call, not letting families visit, the manipulation and bad mouthing of family, all of those are big red flags that we see very frequently. If you see those kind of things happening, what you need to do is stop it, and you need to get rid of that person from the elder's life. They may push back, but it's the best thing that you can do because they are going to be taking advantage of them if they haven't already.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman, your co-host.
Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF. I'm your co-host, Lynn Winter-Gross. Next Village SF is a nonprofit providing older adults in the Northeast neighborhood of San Francisco with support to help age in place.
While researching and preparing for each episode of Not Born Yesterday, Lynn and I have learned several new terms having to do with aging. Not surprisingly, most of these new terms are both demeaning and negative. For example, the fact that people are living longer has been called the silver tsunami, bringing on images of unwanted, devastating, frail, impoverished old people who are taking services away from younger adults. Or the term elder orphans, applied to older people who seem to not have a next of kin when they check into a hospital. And my overall least favorite, little lady.
But one of the most depressing is the term elder abuse. It's a type of mistreatment to an older person, physical, emotional, or financial. And that's what we want to talk about today, specifically elder abuse by their caregivers. It's estimated that more than 10% of older people are victims to this specific type of abuse. Abuse can happen to anyone, no matter the person's age, sex, race, religion, ethnic, or cultural background. Each year, hundreds of thousands of adults over the age of 60 are abused, neglected, or financially exploited. Abuse can happen in many places, including the older person's home, a family member's house, an assisted living facility, or even a nursing home. The mistreatment of older adults can be by family members, strangers, healthcare providers, caregivers, or even friends. Our guest today is attorney Ingrid Evans, who practices in the area of elder law. She's won more than $100 million in restitution for seniors who were defrauded by insurance and living trust companies. Ms. Evans knows the moral costs of elder abuse, and we want to talk to her today specifically about caregivers and the individual and public solutions for prevention and protection.
Before we begin, however, I want to stress that our guest represents victims of financial and emotional abuse, and not all older adults with caregivers or living with family or in long-term care facilities suffer such abuse. Nor do we want to disregard the fact that many older patients can be abusive to the caregiver. In fact, many newspaper obituaries feature thank yous to caregivers, and we all know of hardworking and honest people who take care of our loved ones and are truly devoted to them. Ingrid Evans, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Thank you.
So let's start out with telling us why you decided to specialize in this kind of law.
Well, I started off it must have been about 20 plus years ago. I was at the city attorney's office, and they asked if anybody wanted to help protect an elderly neighbor of a man who took all of his money and bought a Porsche. And so I said, yes, I would love to do that. And so I started off doing that at the city attorney's office in San Francisco and fell in love with protecting seniors. And that is what I focus on.
Can you give an example of a typical caregiver abuse case?
Sure. I'm handling quite a few of them right now. One that I am handling right now was a 103-year-old man who his wife died several years before. And this was in about 2018. Suddenly some neighbors, friends came into his life. They became his caregiver, learned he had several houses in San Jose, moved him into their house, moved their kids into one of his houses, and then tried to take the rest of his property and took all of his financial assets.
Now, I understand that physicians are mandatory reporters if they see suspicious physical injuries or hear something that doesn't sound right. But many people have stopped seeing doctors during COVID. They haven't seen them in person anyway. So if an older adult is in a private care center or has a caregiver or even in a nursing home, the families have been excluded as well. So that meant victims couldn't really reach out for help. So are there any solutions as the pandemic persists?
It is a huge problem. The pandemic has isolated people and made us more vulnerable as a society, especially for those people that are suffering, and elders are suffering in this time. And yes, it is a problem. It is a huge problem. What we can do, I think, is check in more frequently on our elders. Family members need to, friends need to. Don't just call, go in person, check their finances, make sure that they have somebody helping them, somebody that's trustworthy and not somebody who's just out to get some money from them.
One would think that hiring a caregiver through a licensed insured agency would help a lot, does it? Is there simply a scarcity of educated and licensed caregivers?
You would expect that, but that is not always the case. I've handled quite a few cases where even through a licensed agency, the caregiver has attempted to steal their house from their family. I'll give you an example of one that I handled recently. It was a very reputable licensed agency. Caregiver worked for the elder. The elder had one child, an adult child. She had a house down in Santa Clara worth several $1 million. The caregiver saw her as a potential victim, isolated her, and stopped working for the agency, worked for her privately then. So she was brought in through this reputable agency and then saw that she could make some money on this, and then changed the deed to the house to herself and tried to exclude the only child of the deceased victim.
Besides the isolation, are there red flags that family members should look for at the outset? I know if you don't let somebody visit, or you say, oh, she's sleeping now, she can't talk, but are there any other red flags that we should think about? And what can you do about it if you're far away?
Yeah, lots of red flags. So it starts with them befriending the person, getting a little too familiar with them. Then usually they try to control all aspects of their life, whether it's power of attorney for finances, whether it's power of attorney for healthcare. Never, ever, ever should you give somebody who is not a trusted family member or a professional fiduciary your power of attorney for finances when they're just helping take care of you. That's my position. So that's a huge red flag. If somebody's asking for a power of attorney for your finances and they are a caregiver, they should not access your finances. That is not their job. You should get a licensed professional fiduciary to help you if you don't have family that can help you. Other red flags are just the gradual control and takeover of your life. If somebody is changing phone numbers, not letting friends call, not letting families visit, the manipulation and bad mouthing of family, all of those are big red flags that we see very frequently. If you see those kind of things happening, what you need to do is stop it, and you need to get rid of that person from the elder's life. They may push back, but it's the best thing that you can do because they are going to be taking advantage of them if they haven't already.
Is there an agency where someone can report elder abuse?
Yes. In every county in California, there is Adult Protective Services. You can call and make a report to them. I also recommend going to the district attorney, the police department in that county as well, because they all have different teams. They're supposed to coordinate. They do and don't sometimes. So I would go to all of the above. You can also go to the ombudsman for physical abuse type of cases and financial abuse. But primarily for financial abuse, I recommend Adult Protective Services. Sometimes, though, if it's family that is abusing, they don't do a lot. So in that situation, they need to get some other help, either go to the police or get a civil attorney, somebody else to help them.
Some of these examples are really upsetting. How rare is this, or is this fairly common?
It's fairly common. I would say, as Miriam said earlier, it's not the majority of cases. It's not, I would say it's much, much less than the majority of cases, probably under 10%, but it's still in California, those are significant numbers. Yeah, potentially thousands and thousands of victims, hundreds of thousands of victims just in California alone. So it happens. My phone is ringing off the hook, and especially around the holidays, it seems like everybody starts discovering the abuses that are going on with their family or their friends. And that's when we become most busy and aware of the bad situations that are going on.
You mentioned a couple of cases you've had recently. how do they play out? If someone has changed the deed to the house, for example, how does the family prove that that wasn't the person's intention all along?
Well, we get witnesses to say that they weren't able to make those kind of decisions, that they were unduly influenced, that they were manipulated, because isolation and undue influence can happen even if you are competent. They can badmouth your family, which happens frequently. So in those kind of situations, what we do is we file a case. We usually do a lis pendens on the properties to try to get the property back and quiet title to the property to get it moved. And I know those are legal terms of art that most people don't understand, but essentially what it is moving the property back from the wrongful taker to the victim or the victim's family. That's what we try to do.
So you've given a lot of advice in other places where I've read what you say. And I know one of them is that you need to have a conversation with your family or with trusted friends about how you want everything handled if you become ill or incapacitated. A lot of people are reluctant to do that. They think that, oh, my parents are going to think I want them to die sooner so I can get their money, or we don't even want to talk about death because right now everybody's okay. So how do you start with something like that?
It is so important to get over the fear of talking about this because it's inevitable. We all are going to face this reality. And what you need to do is you need to talk to your family members about it and ask what they're comfortable with. What I have done in my own situation and for my family members is we have joint powers of attorney. So that way there can be no abuses. I mean, you still can have abuse in any situation, but it minimizes the abuse. So for me, what I do is I have two powers of attorney for my finances. So if anything were to happen to me, they have to work together collectively. And it's less and likely that you're going to have abuses in that situation. And that is what I recommend to my senior clients as well.
And the family can't come in and end that?
They can. When somebody is competent, any power of attorney can be revoked. So you need to check in frequently, make sure things aren't being changed. If they're moving in and living at the house, which does happen frequently, that's a red flag. Get them out of the house. They shouldn't be there, and check their paperwork. I would check in too frequently. If you have power of attorney already for your parent, you should check in with their lawyer and make sure that they are not changing things, because usually they go to the same lawyer to change things. They have a relationship already. So if you're power of attorney, you have the right to check with the lawyer and make sure nothing has happened.
The families that I know hire caregivers are so dependent upon the caregivers. They themselves can't keep doing it.
Right. And that is the reality we face too, as well. Most people are very busy. They can't, maybe afford or have the space to have their family members move into their house, or the family member doesn't want to move into their house. And so, yes, we are very dependent on the caregivers. I think it's really important to have a relationship with the caregivers, make sure they know you're present. Have cameras. Make sure your elder is aware and signs off on having cameras. There's nothing wrong with that. For example, one of my clients, they had a safe and a lot of jewelry, and all of it was stolen. And had they had cameras, and they do now, we would know who took that, the jewelry. So that's something that I recommend. You can put the cameras directly onto anything that's important or valuable.
So we were talking a minute ago about how when you have this conversation with your parents or with other elderly people, that we have to talk about what might happen. And I know you've said things like set up automatic payments for rent or mortgage and apply low limits on credit cards, things like that. Are there other things that people can do ahead of time? It makes us feel like, oh, we're going to be so scared of the caregiver. We're so worried that they're going to be bad that they don't even have a chance to prove themselves first.
Right. That's a fair point. There's some materials online that I think are really, really helpful. There's one, I think it's called Roadmap Ahead, and it allows the senior to fill out all of their assets. So where their bank is, where their mortgage is. So if anything were to happen to them, you would have access to all of that information, assuming you trust the person you're giving it to and you don't give it to a caregiver, give it to your son or daughter. For example, my dad, he had a stroke several years ago and he wasn't able to pay his bills for a period of time. Had I had that information, I would have been able to jump in right away and know where to pay his mortgage and all of that. With not having that information, we had to kind of create invent the wheel on that, and that was problematic. So in the future, we definitely are more organized. I would recommend that. I would also recommend just having full and honest conversations and frequently about it. Don't be afraid to talk. Same thing goes with parents. You know, if you have little kids, you need to have a guardianship set up. You need to have a trust set up. You need to have a will if you don't have any property. That applies to everybody across the board, whether you're a senior or not.
Is there any good news? Are government agencies ramping up services?
Not that I know of. I think the numbers are so daunting and the resources so scarce that they just aren't able to do stuff like that. So it really is incumbent upon family and private fiduciaries to protect seniors and make sure that they're okay.
Oh, Ingrid, you've given us so much to think about, and it's difficult information, but we really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you think people need to know if they're in a position to hire a caregiver for someone?
Yeah, I think it's really important. Get your ducks in a row early. You know, go have your living trust done, have a will done, have your powers of attorney, and think about who you trust and want in place. And if you don't have somebody that you trust, get a private professional fiduciary. They're licensed, bonded, and insured in California. I think that's really, really important. So the longer that you have that power of attorney in place, the more likely down the road, if something were to happen where a caregiver comes in, you can prove that your intent had been for 20 some years to have it this way. And if it suddenly is changed when you're 101 years old, that's going to look a little iffy and will help a case down the road if you need to bring one.
Oh, great advice. Thank you so much for being our guest today. Our guest was Ingrid Evans of the Evans Law Firm.
Thank you for having me.
On a lighter note, today's news you can use is focused on smart home technology. While we've told you about new technology products like monitored pill containers or wearable devices with alarms if one falls, there are dozens or even hundreds of new technological devices that help older people continue to live independently. And you don't even have to be older to use these devices. Some of these devices might need professional assistance to install, but they're all geared to giving the resident peace of mind. Smart cameras are usually easy to install and use and can be placed anywhere. Most use batteries and aren't dependent on your home electricity. These security systems can monitor not only who's at the door, but whether the door is locked or even if the oven was accidentally left on.
There are also smart video doorbells. That allows residents to see who's at the door and decide if they want to answer it. Many also have motion detectors built in, so you know someone is there even if they don't ring the bell. Smart smoke detector and carbon monoxide alarms now exist that will send a mobile alert or email you or others so you know what's going on.
And then there's smart EKG monitors. They can be of real help to elders as they capture a medical grade EKG in less than a minute. One can detect AFib or a normal heart rhythm as well. And they include the ability to send an email to your doctor or anyone else you designate. Smart lighting devices are great for people of all ages because they remember to turn off the lights if you forget. One can set the lights to go on or off automatically at certain times of the day, or you can use voice commands if you like smart speakers. Smart thermostats are also great for all ages, especially if you want to change the temperature without getting out of your chair.
And now there are even smart cleaning devices. Robotic vacuums mean you don't have to carry around a heavy vacuum cleaner anymore. And devices like Roomba can be set up on a schedule from your smartphone. These devices magically return to their charging station, and all you have to do is empty them.
All of these devices are helpful to anyone who wants to continue to live independently. The costs vary, but the bottom line is enhancing the quality of your life. If we are lucky enough to be aging, smart home technology is a great way to take care of our elders and ourselves. That's our podcast for today. Our thanks to attorney Ingrid Evans. Our engineer is Jason Dahlstadt, and our theme music is from Hook Sounds. You can learn more about Next Village SF by going to their website, nextvillagesf.org. And thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you want to discover and discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterday@nextvillagesf.org. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.